On this week's edition of Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leanne, we'll preview the Laver Cup, recap the Davis Cup. We've got news on Sloan, Serena, and Maria, and we have some sex. Well, actually, the battle of the sexes. All of that and much more as PST on PSN starts now. All right, it's Thursday, the 21st of October, actually September 2000. I wish it was October. I'm kind of a fall-winter guy. I'm your host, Greg DePalma. I'm being joined once again by my former top 15 player in the world, guest analyst who's been here for now a little over a year on the Prime Sports Radio Network. And so in case you've ever missed any of our shows, by the way, and I haven't said this before, we've got a long library list of Prime Sports Tennis programs available with Andrea going back from over a year. So don't forget that. You can go to the PSN library either at primesportsnetwork.com or, of course, you can also go to our YouTube or iTunes pages on the Prime Sports Network, and all of our shows are available. So every time Andrea says something smart, you can go back and reference that. Anyway, let's welcome in Andrea Leanne to the show, former top 15 player in the world. And as we begin this new and improved, faster-paced edition of Prime Sports Tennis, you ready for this one, Andrea?
I'm going to try because we have a lot to talk about, Greg.
All right, well, let's get right to it. As I said in the open, let's start with the Laver Cup because this is big news, and Laver Cup starting this weekend. There's a lot of people out there that have heard about this. We've talked about this, but we haven't really explained it in detail what they're going to be getting into.
Well, we really don't have to because of the incredible marketing behind this whole entire campaign led by Roger Federer, his manager, Tony Godsick. They have done a beautiful job, Greg, in letting the fans know exactly what this event is about. It's a weekend event. You have two teams. It's Europe versus the world. John McEnroe is captaining the world, and Bjorn Borg's the captain of the Europe team, and it's kind of a little bit like the Ryder Cup of tennis. And Roger Federer has done a beautiful job in spearheading something different in the game. He wanted to reinvent it a little bit, show the fans a different angle, and keep that team spirit. And he has, Greg. It has just been so phenomenal over there. The guys are having a ball. The hundreds of thousands of citizens in Prague out there on the streets supporting it. So the enormous amount of support's been so fun to see. And, of course, you have Rod Laver, who is such a hero to everyone, two Grand Slam champions. He won the Grand Slam twice. And just such a humble, gracious man that everyone loves to celebrate. So he's over there. As I said, John McEnroe, Bjorn Borg is there. And, of course, we have all our stars led by, of course, Rafa and Roger. And so lots of excitement. There are planefuls of billionaires going over there, Greg, I know. I've been getting tape back from all the journalists who are there. I've never seen such an incredibly crowded room of journalists there. So it really has attracted a lot of attention. There's some naysayers. There's some people who, were nitpicking a little bit, had their noses out of joint because they didn't come up with the idea first. But I have to tell you, so far, so good. It's been an enormous success. And, of course, Tennis Channel is going to be broadcasting all of it, minute to minute. They have done a great job in really prelimming it for us, previewing it all with Justin Gimelstob and Tracy Austin, giving all the scenarios, all the synopsis. And what we're going to see now is the action unfold as the event begins tomorrow.
Yeah, with Rafa and Roger on the same team right there, that I think is interesting enough. And they had a press conference earlier today, and this is what Roger had to say.
Well, I always had the feeling it would be great to honor the past, because I feel like we struggle to have a decent platform for the legends of the game, because either you're a coach or you're a commentator, and there's no in between really. And not every legend wants to come to a tournament and having to talk about the present game because they maybe don't want to be in the press and everybody to know what they think of a certain player or a certain rivalry. So that was my initial thought, is that maybe we could have a celebration of tennis on the weekend, and that was it, And then really other people took it to the next level and came up with ideas of having it sort of in a Ryder Cup system, which I don't know that much about, to be honest. I've seen it a couple of times, but it's not like I dream about it every night, whereas others have. But it's super emotional. It's intense, and that's what we like about it. And then here we are right now, and it's really, really exciting to see Bjorn and John back in the game and honoring the great man in Rod Laver, who we also look up to, really.
Yeah, I tell you what, that is something that is also very interesting about uh, this event, Andrea, is the fact that you get Borg, we get McEnroe, and they're on the opposite sides, and right there, that should, especially for a lot of the fans growing up in that follow the sport, that adds instant credibility to what this event is all about.
Well, and I think that's right. It's really embracing all the generations. We have Francis Tiafoe is there subbing in for Delpo. We have Denis Shapovalov there. He is absolutely, the name of the moment. Everyone's loving him after he did so well at the Canadian Open and beating Rafa, and then of course getting to the semifinals. So everyone is eyeing him. And then you have Sasha Zverev, you have Nick Kyrgios, Jack Sock, all this new generation, this new guard, with the present guard of Rafa and Roger. But as you said, now we also have John and Bjorn, and of course Rod Laver. 4 generations, and I think the public likes that. Everyone's been trying to find a way to thread this together, and this has been a terrific venue. And we've looked at Larry Ellison as setting the model for tournaments with what he's done to Indian Wells on the tour, and really reinventing that reinventing the whole entire scenario of how you approach a tennis tournament and what you really can offer fans as a whole experience. And so I think that the attention, Greg, is really veering from just looking at trying to get that one big name or that three big names in the draw, and really for the tournament directors and the producers of these events really thinking outside the box and trying in different ways to reinvent the entire format of it all so that you can engage fans in a full experience other than just playing tennis. And they're getting that over there in Prague. They really are liking it. And the good news is that they're getting a lot of support. The USTA has supported it. Tennis Australia has supported it. We're supposed to, apparently the rumor is it should be in the United States next year. Steve Zacks has led the marketing campaign for this event. It's a big team, and it's been years in the works, so they put a lot of energy into it. But what they're showing at the Laver Cup is you can do the marketing in a different way. You can raise the bar. You can get the players there. You can do all these things that everyone has been saying. All these tennis directors, tournament directors have been saying, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. Oh, the players aren't showing up. Well, guess what? If you do have a little bit of creativity and you think outside the box and you are able to motivate not just the fans but the players themselves, you can come up with something even better. So I'm glad that Roger has done that. I'm glad he's pushing, the edges there, and he's pushing these other tournament directors to start thinking about other ways to, showcase the sport. And Tony Gossick as well as manager, because of course he's the brains behind a lot of it, I have to say, and building the team. And it's been a first class team. Every single person has contributed, and I think that it'll be interesting to see the end results. But so far, everyone has been giving it rave reviews, most especially the players.
Now, you've been in a lot of tournaments, a lot of different
events, and the sponsors, by the way, Greg. It's a long, long list of sponsors.
Well, and it's always a great opportunity. Sometimes you take a chance on something and you never know if it's going to work. But again, when you have the players with one of the greatest, if not the greatest player of all time, you got some of the greatest players of all time with Nadal and Federer and company. And then you got McEnroe and Borg there as captains. And it is, if you're going to take a risk for an event like this, I mean, this is the type of risk you take a chance with. So because you're there, especially at the ground up, and the businesses that take those early chances, they're the ones that are going to benefit years from now. That's the way it always works in business, if you take a chance early.
Yeah, and this is an event also that's supposed to be played every year except Olympic years. They take a year off for that. And everyone's saying, well, how can the guys keep proposing new events one after the other? We've heard about this World Cup event they won in the beginning of the year, day zero, they're calling it, where it's a 10-day, 2-week team event all over the place near Australia and Asia. And I agree. If you can't post for the events you already have, why create some, extravaganza like this? But this is a weekend event. This is a 3-day thing. Of course, we just had Davis Cup, which we're going to talk about last week. And so, you have to squeeze it in there. But you know what? Quite frankly, he's done it, and it's worked. And so I think to some degree, if the guys have fun and they enjoy themselves, and gosh, they're in their suits and they look so handsome and they so suave and dapper, and they're all having fun with each other. That's another great thing, that they come away from the weekend really feeling like, I really am more invested in the sport is more fun, the tennis is more fun, and the competition is more fun. And that is just what guys like Nick Kyrgios need.
Yeah, and speaking of Nick Kyrgios in the Davis Cup, wow. Belgium defeating Australia. It looked like Australia was in a good position to win. And there's also a little bit of controversy, I guess, we hear about Leighton Hewitt, his decision to go with Jordan Thompson over John Millman. But it didn't work out for Australia. They were that close to not only getting to the first final in over a decade, but actually hosting it.
Well, they put Jordan Thompson at the end. They didn't go with Kakanakis. That was a surprise for the number two. Not a lot said. They kept it in-house, which is fine. I always like that. But it really was about Kyrgios, and Kyrgios was not able to beat Goffin to seal the deal for Australia. Was very gracious in defeat, saying we win as a team, we lose as a team. This will make us stronger. We're gung ho for next year. And next year, of course, the draw did come out, and they have a very tough draw. But I think that there's a lot going on with Nick Kyrgios. Lately, Greg, he's been giving these, first person accounts of the fact that now he's saying that the death of his grandmother 3 years ago, 2014, that he is still grieving from this, that he's very annoyed with himself for the fact he did not spend more time with her before she passed away at the age of 74. He has tattooed her age, 74, to his middle finger. People can make all the reference they want to that, but so he looks down at his middle finger during matches, and no one can figure out what he's looking at. Well, it's the 74 tattoo on the finger. And he said that, he really feels badly now that he had commitments because he had just beaten Rafa at Wimbledon and he had other obligations, and he didn't go with his mother to visit his grandmother just before she died. And so that apparently is now on his mind. Although at the time, when I look back in the records and his quotes, he said he was going to use her death as inspiration and motivation in his game. But now he's talking about how he remembered her, taking him and his siblings to all their tennis dates and all their tennis games and clinics and all their activities and so forth, because his mother had to work. His mother's is an engineer, a computer engineer, and obviously had a full-time job. And so she was left with, as Nick said, doing the mom work during the day. And so he's very, very close to her, as he is to the rest of his family. But you have to wonder, he said he would remember her with her Woman's Day and her cigarettes, sitting there smoking her cigarettes and reading her Woman's Day while he practiced. But, Greg, all parents and grandparents look that way. I remember when Vijay Amritraj would come out to watch his son play and with his Wall Street Journal. And he'd open the Wall Street Journal up and he'd be peering out, trying to make sure his son was hitting the ball right. Because all parents and grandparents want to look nonchalant, but you can believe that every single time the kid turns around, they're focused on their kid and seeing what they're doing. And I'm sure Nick's grandmom was just as focused on him and making sure that he had all the advantages in life and all the good things it had to offer, and making all the efforts so that he could embrace it all. And so you hope that, as he's trying to obviously sort out a lot of things, that he realizes he puts this in a place he can manage so that he can then focus on himself and the real issues. And obviously, as he himself says, which was apparent in the loss to Goffin at Davis Cup, was that he's just not in shape physically. He's an incredible natural talent. This arm is just, second to none. They call it the golden arm because of the power, the sheer power, natural power that he can generate from it. But, he's getting injured because he's just, because when you're not in shape, Greg, you're vulnerable to injury. And he's got the sore arm and the back and the shoulder and the legs and stuff because he's not putting the time in the gym. And, you see him all over the place. As I mentioned at the U.S. Open, I come back to the hotel after midnight, and there he is on the hotel lobby floor with the, in the luggage trolley on his Twitter thing and in his, kind of sweatsuit still, and people are walking over him and this and that. And, he obviously wants some attention. He wants someone to help him sort through this and navigate through this. But it's been difficult for those then to really connect. So Leighton Hewitt is one of them, we think. So Davis Cup is a good thing for Nick. I think this team event, the Laver Cup, will be a good thing for Nick. Because as he's always said, he likes basketball because it's team. Well, this is another opportunity. But, it's also about maturing. And I've seen so many of these 20-something-year-old, it doesn't matter if they're guys and girls, because we've seen it with the girls too, where they have to really, you can give them everything they need. The team can be working on overdrive, but it has to ultimately come from the athlete themselves. And whether it's Nick or Madison Keys or whomever, Sloan Stephens, they have to finally put the pieces together themselves so that they feel comfortable. So, we are glad Nick is participating in Davis Cup and supporting his team. And we just hope that now he can take some of that and do well on the tour as he can.
Well, what kind of does he have the right discipline? And do you think?
Discipline.
Does he have what it takes? Do you think, or is it just maturity?
Well, I don't even have to think about it, because he actually today, in fact, at the Laver Cup, said he doesn't have the discipline like a Roger and a Rafa. And he said that's the problem. And he said he just, that's a talent. He calls discipline a talent, and he just doesn't have it. And it's interesting because Maria, of course, she's going through this whole promotional tour. The one thing that stuck out in my mind about some of the things Maria has said that was so interesting to me was how, I think she said when she was 9 years old, her mother would have her memorize verses of Pushkin, the poet, and that she would have to keep memorizing, and that's what taught her discipline. That's what taught her you don't always get to do everything you like. Sometimes you have to do things in repetition to really become good and to really learn that discipline if you want to excel. And she said she was taught this at a very, very young age, and this is what carried over to making her such a great tennis player, was discipline. I totally agree, by the way. She's absolutely right. What separates her from the rest is her discipline. I have never seen another athlete as disciplined in all levels, by the way, as Maria. And it's not just the tennis; it's everything she does. It's her daily activities. It's her schedule. I remember when she was put on suspension, she said that she got up in that morning and went to that spin class because she was going to set the bar high in the standard she was going to set in this suspension, because she has that discipline. Again, I don't think it's a talent or a gift. I think it is something you learn, and it's something that you learn very young that you can learn when you get older though too. So can Nick learn to be disciplined? Mm-hmm. Yes, but it's going to take a lot of investment in him to want to do that at this stage. Not really, when you're younger, it's like learning a second language. It just, it's one of these things that it comes naturally. So now for Maria, it's second nature. But for Nick, it will be a little tougher.
All right. Well, then, does Maria, though, does she have PR discipline? Because, and by the way, Maria's book tour, she's all over Tennis Channel selling her book. So you can go to tennischannel.com and check that out. But Maria, let's not forget, Maria, a long time ago, and this is some of the things that have been coming out. You're kind of rehashing what has happened in Maria's life. Was when Maria, some time ago, said that Serena Williams has thick arms and thick legs.
Please don't say the T word.
I mean, you say these things.
Well, and by the way, Tennis Channel just did an exclusive interview with Maria. They have it on their website. They have it on Twitter, clips of it. It was a great, great interview they did. I think Justin Gimelstob, I think Steve Wiseman. And, it's the T word. And, of course, all of us ladies, Greg, when we hear that, we shudder. Next time I see Maria, I'm going to wear a jacket. I don't want her looking at my arms. I don't think this is an African-American thing. I think this is an all-woman thing. I can't think of what grown woman doesn't worry about how thick their arms look or their legs look. And we all can't look like Maria. We all wish we could.
But what is that about? Why did she even reference that?
Maria was saying when she was 17 years old, or young, just starting on the tour, that she was in the locker room, and this is her perception of Serena. And so she used this type of description, and is a little bit, and obviously it's okay when you're 17, but as a 30-year-old to have to repeat a comment a 17-year-old would make was probably not the greatest. And because I think that when you look overall, Greg, is that, in a type of thing, we just saw Serena write a letter to her mother. And, it was one of the most beautiful letters you could ever imagine. And in the letter, she thanks her mother for, creating the person that she is, physically and mentally. And she thanks her mother. And also, this is also on Tennis Channel's website. And it's worth looking at because, you get to a point where you hear all the little childhood books of everyone comes in different shapes and sizes, and you celebrate everyone's uniqueness and not try to undermine it. And I think this is the interpretation of the letter. And in the letter, Serena says, and I'll just give you a couple lines because I thought it was interesting. She says in there, This is to her mother, you are one of the strongest women I know. I was looking at my daughter. Oh my God, I have a daughter. And she has my arms and legs, my exact same strong, muscular, powerful, sensational arms and body. I don't know how I would react if she had to go through what I've gone through since I was 15 years old, and even to this day. And, I think that is an interesting comment. I mean, of course, a lot of people feel that this is in direct response
Sure,
to Maria.
sounds like it.
She goes on to say, I have been called man because I appeared outwardly strong. It has been said that I use drugs. No, I have always had far too much integrity to behave dishonestly in order to gain an advantage, she continues. And it goes on because it's a long letter, but I think that the point is that Serena likes to celebrate life. She likes to, embrace it all. And I'm glad that she does honor her mother, because when we see Sloan Stephens win the U.S. Open, and she pays homage to her mother and the journey they have taken, you begin to think, well, what would she say about Clijsters and Capriati and Davenport? You have so many different athletes out there and physiques. It was kind of interesting. And then, of course, I think it was Chris Clary who just brought up the fact, it was interesting in the book that, Maria is constantly talking about the rivalry with Serena. And what was the rivalry really? I mean, they're 19-2. Maria hasn't beaten Serena since 2004.
Yeah.
If you look at the stats, Greg, if you look at the figures, there really is nothing on there that would support that. Of course, Serena, 23 Grand Slams, Maria, 5. Serena with 72 WTA Tour titles, Maria with 35. Serena having been number one for 319 weeks, Maria 21. Serena with 84 million plus in prize money, Maria with 37. Not that anyone's suffering here, but the bottom line was the stats really reflect that Serena is in a completely different stratosphere. There is no we in GOAT. There's only one, greatest of all time. And I think that would be nice for Maria to acknowledge that and, move on and really just celebrate what she's done and not constantly compare, because I think it was Chris Clary in his Twitter who said, what's interesting is the fixation Maria seems to have on Serena from such a young age, at the age of 9. And she talks about in her book when the Williams were at Bollettieri's, and Maria didn't even want to watch them, had to go into a shed or something and didn't even want to be seen watching them. And that clearly from that point forward, she had some sort of focus on Serena. Now, Serena was 14, and obviously, I can tell you, I knew Serena at 14. I don't think she ever mentioned Maria's name. And I don't think that she's really ever mentioned Maria's name a lot since, as far as that was concerned. I do think there's been a tit for tat with over who gets the nod on the Forbes list in these recent times, because it's the off-court branding that obviously has been very competitive. But when you go back to when, they were youngsters and teenagers, to me, I think that Serena, when she looks at her rivals, is going to see, her sister. That was quite a challenge to get through. But then the Davenports, the Clijsters, the Hennons, especially Justine Henin, the Capriatis, the Hingises, these were all the players that she, had a much tougher fight with. And I remember as I play is that you tend to remember the players you lose to, not the ones you beat. So I can understand Maria focused on Serena because she's lost her so many times. But I also can understand Serena looking towards a whole different other group as the ones that really stick, in her mind as the tougher opponents. But it's the mindset's so interesting, and of course it all plays out on Twitter, as we all know. So the saga will continue because, of course, now Serena's daughter, Alexis Olympia, has her own Instagram site.
Oh, well, that's the age we live in, isn't it? It doesn't take long for something like that to happen. And you have one superstar, though, like Serena, who says, we talked about before, she's still going to be around a little while longer until she can break the Grand Slam record. But there's another one that we got the passing of the torch, possibly, with Sloan Stephens winning the U.S. Open. She's on the cover of SI as well. She deserves to be. And we talked about last week that, unfortunately, just based on, of course, her injuries earlier in the season, that it doesn't look like she's going to be able to make the WTA championships next month.
Well, that's based on your points for the entire year. And as we mentioned, Sloan was out a good portion of this year with that surgery on the foot, so she really did not come back. Her first tournament was Wimbledon till July, and so she hasn't had a lot of time. She's had great results. She got two back-to-back semis in the Canadian and Cincy, and then of course winning the U.S. Open. So she's in there. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. But we can salute Sloan because to see her on the cover of SI Sports Illustrated was such a monumental occasion, quite frankly, and the journey that she has taken, and so much has been made about her father, John Stevens, who's a running back for the New England Patriots. He's passed away. He passed away during the U.S. Open. I was with them, and it was a very emotional time. It was, 8 years ago, September 1st, the day Serena's baby was born. Talk about karma. And he died in a car accident late at night. He was, as Sloan's mother, Sybil, has noted, was obviously struggling with a lot of disease, degenerative bone disease and so forth, so was not well. SI points out the convictions that he had on his record. But to me, as I see Sloan and I see her on the cover, I see more mom now. I see the smile. I see her grandfather, her maternal grandfather's twinkle in her eye, the spark, the smile, the energy, and now, of course, all the pieces of the puzzle. Because one of the things I think, and we talked about Kyrgios about this, and we talked a little bit about Madison Keys too, is that, I think they have this time off tour when they're injured, and they realize, what, I'm not really missing that much. Yes, I'm going to all the birthday parties and I'm getting to hang out with friends, but after a while, I think they bore themselves to death. I mean, how many cupcakes can you make and tweet out the pictures before you realize, what, this career really is something special. This is something that really can, I need to embrace and can make my life so incredible. And so I think that the time off has really helped them. And I think it helped Sloan. I think it helped Madison realize what their priorities are, what they really want. And when it comes from them, then all of a sudden everything just falls into place. And then all of a sudden you see Madison and Sloan in the finals of the U.S. Open. And then everything just looks like, gosh, this is so easy. But it's been not an overnight story. This has been a long, long journey. And which brings us to the point of how this can all happen, and that's our Battle of the Sexes movie with Billie Jean King. Greg, have you seen it?
No, I think it's coming out this weekend. I know you got an opportunity to see it because of the position you're in, but no, I think it said it's coming out tomorrow, I believe, nationwide.
And Tennis Channel's had some great interviews on it. They have on there, Billie Jean and Emma Stone and Steve Carell, who are the actors in the movie, phenomenal, incredible stars, in the movie. It's all on their website, all the clips and interviews. But, I saw the movie. I saw one of the screenings, and it's a great movie. And I remember, though, when I was 9, Greg, I remember watching it on TV. And I remember the scene that stands out to me was when they bring her in. To me, it was like a chariot. I thought it was a chariot because they bring her onto court, they carry her on, and all this hoopla and celebratory noise and fanfare and so forth. And to me, though, obviously she was, breaking so much of the, the barriers for women and equality for women, and really showing that women should be treated equal in all realms and all levels. And of course, beating Bobby Riggs was such a momentous thing in that. But to me, it also showed that if you believe in yourself, and this really it didn't matter if you were a girl or a boy, you could be any gender, any race. But if you believed in yourself and you believed in your abilities and you set your sights and you put the hard work in, that you could accomplish what you want. And that's what Billie, and I've played doubles with Billie. I've known her for a long, long time. She's always been a mentor to everyone on tour. She's very gracious and generous in that way. But everything that she does full heart. It's the full heart, full head. And she never wavers in her own belief in herself. And so that's what it meant to me, that you could have these chariot moments in life, and where you inspire people, you excite them, you have passion, but you also inspire them to set the bar high for themselves. And so when I think about that Battle of the Sexes, entire movie, and also when I watched it, it's about that. It's about inspiring others to really go for their best. And that's in all venues. It doesn't have to be just on a tennis court. It can be marketing. It could be, in school. It could be in baseball. It can be in art. It can be in any venue. And that's why I think the movie transcends the sports arena into, your general life. And I think when you see Sloan, that's her chariot moment. And when you see Nick Kyrgios, his grandmother, I will guarantee you, wants him to have these chariot moments where he goes out there and embraces life. And so I'm happy to see in the other venue is where you have Roger Federer pushing the bar there. So it couldn't be better timing. And I think there is a karma to the fact this movie is coming out just at this time.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about how everything goes with the movie that gets underway this weekend on next week's shows. And we're going to have a couple of shows next week. Of course, we're going to recap the Laver Cup. We're also going to preview the WTA event in Beijing, the China Open. So, because that's going to be one of our two shows, because we're going to actually do a draw preview show next Friday, because that event actually gets underway Friday night our time. Is that correct? Eastern time next Friday night?
Right. I mean, they're in Asia now. They're about, variable 12, 14, 16 hours ahead of us, and depending on where they are in Asia. But, we'll have that draw. Because now, of course, it's the race to the ATP finals, the WTA championships. Of course, it's the, Porsche race to Singapore. They call it on the WTA. And the ATP's done a great job. They have their next-gen final in Milan first, and I'm getting daily things about that. Amazon now has picked up that. Again, we go to the fact that it's a lot of different events, a lot of excitement in the end. And we're going to see some new faces, I think, starting the new year. So, lots going on, and a lot going on also, Greg, off court. I just saw this Women's Tennis Coaching Association has just formed an incredible group. Ann Grossman's behind it, former player. And it's amazing that Judy Murray has gotten on board. And I just read on Tennis Channel's website again an interview with Judy Murray and how she and her son Andy, quite frankly, this week are really spearheading equality for women and really pushing and making sure young girls get the same opportunities as young boys. And Judy Murray has embraced this Women's Tennis Coaching Association, as well as a lot of other high-profile coaches as well. So there's a big movement towards trying to really promote equal opportunity for everyone in hopes of really letting everyone be their best self. And so I applaud all of this. And we'll have more of that because as the time comes and Andy's going to return and Novak's getting ready to return, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But, of course, Judy Murray now has her own column, and so we're going to get to hear first person from her about, that journey and, of course, Andy's return.
Yeah, and keep in mind, in a couple of weeks, we'll preview the Shanghai Rolex Masters. We've got that event to cover. We also, of course, will update everybody in the coming weeks on not only the next gen ATP finals, but of course the Nitto ATP finals in London. That's coming up the first week, actually the second week in November. And as we just mentioned, with Singapore. So we'll be updating the standings there weekly on this show to let you know exactly when everything is tied in and we know exactly who's going to be there. That's going to be towards the end of October. And by the way, Davis Cup final, France hosting Belgium, will be next month. Actually, will be in 2 months, November the 24th. So then that'll wrap up the Davis Cup season.
And we just want to say our person of the week, because I heard this on Tennis Channel broadcasting exclusive interview with James Blake. He did appear in New York court, regarding that horrible incident where that the New York policeman, basically what I call attacked him, when he was outside the U.S. Open Hotel in New York a year or so ago, and obviously a mistaken identity, apparently, according to the policeman, but James did testify, does feel the policeman should be fired, and understandably so, but has also formed this foundation to help other people who feel that they've been, unjustly victimized, and to give them a sort of resource as to where to go and to get help. So obviously he's a famous guy. He's able to have that profile to get it out there, but it's nice that he's using, he's not looking for a big settlement for his own pockets, that he's looking for this occasion to really help others as well. So exclusive interview on Tennis Channel. You can pick that up on their website, but it's been quite a week of all good, and we can say all good.
And by the way, also don't forget the Fed Cup final is the second week of November.
We'll be all over that.
Yes.
Especially when your favorite Coco Vandeweghe will definitely be there, I'm sure.
Yeah, Belarus, the host country, against our USA. Lastly, quickly, Pliskova, she's got a news coach.
Pliskova's parted with her coach, and of course, we have to say Thomas Hogshead has finally ended it with Jeannie Bouchard. Apparently now he'll be coaching Makarova. And this is about the time where these coaching arrangements either stick for another year or they end up dying out. So I could see Pliskova doing it. She's had an okay year. She's still in the running for number one, but she hasn't really improved, I think, as she had wanted to. So she's going to try someone else. And, that's okay. That's fine. It's better to move on than to, stay with something that's stale. But I think we'll see a lot of different coaching changes as the next couple months unravel.
All right, excellent. So, again, next Tuesday, we're back on the air to update what's going on in tennis, as well as our draw preview for the WTA event in China next Friday. So, Andrea, appreciate your time as always. Have a great week. Enjoy the Laver Cup, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, fantastic. Thanks.
You got it. All right, so that'll wrap it up for this week's edition of Prime Sports Tennis. Just want to remind everybody you can check out our on-demand broadcast, as we mentioned at the top, either at primesportsnetwork.com, iTunes, or YouTube, and those pages are under Prime Sports Network. You can also follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. And once again, thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leanne on the Prime Sports Radio Network.
She tried to keep us all down, and hope that we will never see the truth.